I'm setting the table for one tonight. Just one plate, one fork, one glass. The dining room table is too big for that, so I eat in the kitchen now, at the small table by the window. I can see the backyard from here. The grass needs cutting, but I'll have to call someone to do it. I can't push the mower anymore. My son-in-law said he'd come by and take care of it, but that was 3 weeks ago. I'm not upset about it. He's busy. They're all busy. I understand that. But I do notice the grass getting longer, and I notice that I'm eating alone again, and I notice that the dining room table has a thin layer of dust on it, because I haven't used it in months. That table used to be the center of everything. We bought it 30 years ago, maybe more. It was oak solid, with 6 chairs. Heavy chairs that scraped against the floor when you pulled them out. We picked it out together, my wife and I, from a furniture store that's not there anymore. We needed something big because the kids were growing. We wanted a place where the whole family could sit down together. That was important to us. Family dinner. Every night if we could manage it. And for a long time, we did manage it. For a long time, that table was full of noise and food and life. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The dinners got quieter before they stopped happening at all. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About when the quiet started. About what I missed while it was happening. My wife Patricia and I got married in 1968. I was 25. She was 23. We met at a church picnic, of all places. I wasn't particularly religious, but my mother insisted I go. Patricia was there with her family. She had a nice smile. We started talking, and that was that. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony. Nothing fancy. We couldn't afford fancy. I was working at the post office then, sorting mail on the night shift. Patricia worked as a secretary at an insurance company. We rented a small apartment and started our life together. We were happy, I think. At least, we didn't fight much. We both worked hard. We saved money. We talked about having kids someday, when we could afford it. Our first child, Robert, came in 1970. We weren't quite ready. But you're never really ready, are you? Patricia stopped working to stay home with him. Money got tighter, but we managed. I picked up overtime shifts whenever I could. Patricia was a good mother. Patient. Gentle. She'd sing to Robert while she rocked him. I'd come home from work in the early morning and find them both asleep in the rocking chair. Our daughter Karen came 2 years later. Then David 3 years after that. 3 kids in 5 years. The apartment got too small, so we moved to a house on the edge of town. A small 3-bedroom place with a yard. That's where we bought the dining room table. That's where we started having family dinners. In the beginning, those dinners were chaotic. The kids were young. Robert was energetic, always bouncing in his chair. Karen was picky about food. David was still in a high chair, throwing things on the floor. Patricia would make a meal, something simple usually, meatloaf or chicken or spaghetti. And we'd all sit down together. I'd come home from work tired, and sometimes I didn't feel like talking. But Patricia would ask about my day, and I'd tell her. She'd talk about what the kids did. Robert learned to ride his bike without training wheels. Karen drew a picture at school. David said a new word. Normal things. Small things. But they filled up the space around that table. We weren't rich. We didn't take fancy vacations. But we had those dinners. We had that time together. As the kids got older, the dinners got easier in some ways and harder in others. They could feed themselves. They didn't make as much mess. But they also started having opinions. Robert didn't like this. Karen wouldn't eat that. David wanted something else. And they started having activities. Soccer practice. Piano lessons. School projects. It got harder to get everyone to the table at the same time. Patricia tried to hold it together. She'd call everyone to dinner, and sometimes we'd all make it. But other times, Robert had practice and had to eat early, or I had to work late. Or Karen had a friend over, and they ate in her room. The table started feeling less full, even when we were all there. I worked a lot in those years. I'd moved up at the post office, got a supervisor position, better pay, but longer hours, more responsibility, more stress. I'd come home tired and not want to talk much. I'd sit at the head of the table and eat quietly while Patricia tried to keep conversation going with the kids. She'd ask them about school, about their friends, about their days. They'd answer in short sentences. Fine. Good. Nothing. The conversations got shorter. The silences got longer. I didn't notice it happening. Or maybe I noticed but didn't think it mattered. We were all there. We were eating together. That was what counted, wasn't it? Patricia started working again when David started middle school. Part-time at first, then full-time. She said we needed the extra money, and she was right. The kids were getting older. They needed things. School trips, sports equipment, clothes, and college was coming. We both knew that. So she went back to work, and that changed things too. She come home tired, just like me. She didn't have as much energy for cooking big meals. We started eating simpler things. Sometimes we'd pick up fast food on the way home. Sometimes we'd eat in shifts because our schedules didn't line up. The dining room table got used less and less. We'd eat in the living room in front of TV, or in the kitchen, or in our rooms. Patricia would say we should sit down together, but then she'd be too tired to insist. And I didn't insist either. I was tired too. It seemed easier to just let everyone do their own thing. Robert left for college when he was 18. We drove him up to the state university, helped him move into his dorm, and then drove home. The house felt different with him gone. Quieter. Patricia cried that first night. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just sat with her. Karen left 2 years later. Then David. And suddenly it was just the two of us again in that house. Just me and Patricia, like it had been at the very beginning. Except it wasn't like the beginning at all. We were older. We were tired. And we'd gotten used to the quiet. We'd sit down for dinner, just the two of us at that big table, and we wouldn't have much to say. I'd ask about her day. She'd ask about mine. We'd eat. We'd clean up. We'd watch TV. Then we'd go to bed. That was our routine. The kids came back for holidays at first. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter sometimes. We'd all gather around that table again, and for a few hours it felt like old times. But it wasn't old times. Robert would bring his girlfriend, later his wife. Karen would talk about her job in the city. David would be distracted, checking his watch, ready to leave. They'd eat quickly. They'd help clean up. Then they'd be gone, back to their own lives. And Patricia and I would be left with leftovers and that big empty table. She'd get sad after they left. She'd say we should call them more, visit more. But we didn't. Life got busy. They had their lives. We had ours. The phone calls got less frequent. The visits got shorter. And the dining room table sat there, mostly unused, collecting dust. Patricia got sick 7 years ago. Breast cancer. It came on fast. One day she found a lump. A few weeks later, she was in treatment. Chemo. Radiation. Surgery. It was a hard year. The hardest year of my life. I took time off work to take care of her. I cooked meals, though I wasn't very good at it. I drove her to appointments. I sat with her while she slept. The kids came to visit when they could. Robert came once. Karen came twice. David called, but said he couldn't get away from work. I try not to be angry about that. I tried to understand. But I was angry. I needed them and they weren't there. Patricia needed them and they weren't there. We'd spent our whole lives taking care of them. And when we needed them, they had excuses. Patricia survived the cancer. She went into remission. The doctors said she'd beaten it. We were relieved. We thought we'd have more time. But something changed in her after that. She got quieter, more withdrawn. She'd sit in her chair and look out the window for hours. I'd ask what she was thinking, and she'd say nothing. But I knew it wasn't nothing. She was thinking about the kids, about how they hadn't been there, about how we'd worked so hard to build this family, and now the family barely existed. She didn't say those things out loud, but I could see it in her face. The sadness, the disappointment, and I felt it too. But I didn't know how to talk about it. I'd never been good at talking about feelings. We stopped using the dining room table altogether after that. Patricia didn't have the energy to cook big meals anymore. I'd make sandwiches or heat up soup. We'd eat in the kitchen or in front of the TV. The dining room became a place we walked through but didn't use. The table sat there, empty. A reminder of something that used to be. I'd walk past it sometimes and remember how it used to be full, how there used to be noise and laughter and arguments, how the kids used to sit in those chairs and tell us about their days, how Patricia used to smile at me from across the table. All of that was gone now, and I hadn't even noticed when it started disappearing. Patricia passed away 2 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. She was in the kitchen making coffee one morning, and she just collapsed. I called 911, but by the time they got there, she was gone. The funeral was small. The kids came. They cried. They said they wished they'd visited more. They said they were sorry. I didn't know what to say to that. Sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't make up for the years of missed dinners and short phone calls and excuses. But I didn't say that. I just nodded and accepted their apologies. Because what else could I do? After Patricia died, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. I thought about selling it and moving somewhere smaller, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. This was where we'd raised our family. This was where all those dinners had happened. Leaving felt like giving up on something. So I stayed. I eat my meals in the kitchen now. The dining room table is still there, but I can't remember the last time I sat at it. Sometimes I stand in the doorway and look at it. 6 chairs, all empty, and I think about how we used to fill those chairs, how we used to be a family that ate together, how somewhere along the way, the dinners got quiet, and then they stopped. I think about what went wrong, where I went wrong. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I should have talked more at dinner instead of sitting there silently. Maybe I should have insisted we keep eating together, even when it got hard. Maybe I should have called the kids more after they left. Maybe I should have told them how much those dinners meant to me. But I didn't. I just let things drift. I let the silence grow. I let the distance happen. And now here I am, an old man eating alone in the kitchen, wondering where all the noise went. The kids call sometimes. Robert calls every few weeks. Karen calls on Sundays. David calls on my birthday and Christmas. They ask how I'm doing. I say I'm fine. They tell me about their lives, their jobs, their kids, my grandchildren, who I barely know. They say they'll visit soon, but soon never comes. Or when it does, it's brief. An hour, 2 if I'm lucky. They sit in the living room and make small talk. They don't stay for dinner. They always have somewhere else to be, something else to do. And I don't blame them. I really don't, because I know I did the same thing to my own parents. I was busy. I had my own life. I had my own family to take care of. I didn't visit as much as I should have. I didn't call as much as I should have. And now I'm on the other side of it. I'm the parent waiting for the call, hoping for the visit, sitting alone at a table that used to be full. I wonder sometimes if I'd told them, if I'd said out loud how much those dinners meant. If I'd said I needed them to be there, if I'd said I was lonely, would it have changed anything? Or would they still be too busy, too caught up in their own lives? I don't know. And I guess I'll never know because I didn't say those things. I just stayed quiet, just like I stayed quiet at all those dinners when the conversation was dying. I could have said something. I could have asked more questions. I could have told them about my day in more detail. I could have made them laugh. I could have done something to keep the noise alive, but I didn't. I let the quiet win, and now the quiet is all I have. I've been thinking about getting rid of the dining room table, maybe selling it or giving it away. It's just taking up space. No one uses it. No one's going to use it. And every time I see it, it reminds me of what I lost, what we lost. But I can't bring myself to do it, because getting rid of that table feels like admitting it's really over. Like admitting that those days are never coming back. And maybe they're not. Maybe I need to accept that. But not yet. Not quite yet. Last week, Robert called and said he might come visit next month. He wasn't sure. He'd have to check his schedule. I said that would be nice. I didn't say I've heard that before. I didn't say I'm not holding my breath. I just said it would be nice. And maybe he will come. Maybe he'll sit in the living room for an hour and drink coffee and tell me about his life. And then he'll leave. And the house will be quiet again. And I'll go back to eating alone in the kitchen. And the dining room table will sit there, empty, waiting for a family that doesn't come anymore. I don't know what the point of all this is. Maybe there isn't a point. Maybe I'm just an old man thinking about the past because the present is too quiet and the future is too short. Maybe everyone goes through this. Maybe every parent ends up sitting alone wondering where the family went. Or maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I should have tried harder, talked more, insisted more, loved louder. I don't know. All I know is that the dinners got quiet before they stopped, and I didn't do anything to stop the quiet from growing. I just let it happen. And now here I am, 78 years old, eating sandwiches in the kitchen, remembering the sound of my children's voices around a table that no one sits at anymore. Tomorrow I'll get up and make my breakfast and eat it alone. I'll do the same thing for lunch and dinner and the day after that and the day after that until one day I won't get up anymore. And the kids will come back then. They'll come to clean out the house. They'll stand in the dining room and look at that table, and maybe they'll remember. Maybe they'll remember the dinners we used to have, the noise, the laughter, the arguments. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just see an old table that needs to be hauled away. Either way, it won't matter, because by then I'll be gone, and the quiet will finally be complete. But for now, I'm still here, still setting a table for one, still remembering when it was set for 6, still wondering when exactly the quiet started and why I didn't fight harder to keep the noise alive.